it is not something that is ever 100% figured out. You're constantly on a daily basis learning about yourself and how you handle certain situations. So for me to work with someone and give the illusion that I have it all figured out, that is not being true, to who I am.
Right. Hi, guys, and welcome to the House Call Vet Cafe podcast. I'm Dr. Eve Harrison. I'm a full-time integrative concierge house call veterinarian in Los Angeles, and I help other vets to build their unique mobile practices on their terms. This podcast is for and by house call and mobile veterinarians, so it is meant to give our community a platform to connect, to share our stories, to lift each other up, and to support each other. Most of us work solo as lone wolves, right? So for me, it's been really powerful to be able to physically hear the voices of my colleagues from all over the world and to get a chance to feel that we truly are part of a community of very real other human beings who get it. While you may be alone in that little bubble of your own vehicle when you're on the road seeing patients, I welcome you to join our community by tuning into our own podcast when you're on your way to your next house call. Whether you're a super experienced house call vet with 30 years of experience, you're a brand new prospective house call vet just looking to get started, or you're house call curious, there will be something for you in this podcast. Each episode, you will hear interviews from other mobile veterinarians just like yourself who are doing unique and innovative things, vets who are sharing their stories, their struggles and challenges, and you can also look forward to hearing valuable information and perspectives from specialists and experts outside of our micro niche. And finally, if becoming a house call veterinarian is something that you've been thinking about exploring, or you're looking for some extra support getting your own mobile practice to feel more profitable and sustainable for you, check out the information in the show notes about my course and our above and beyond supportive private community for members only, plus our monthly group coaching sessions within the House Call Vet Academy. You can also check out my free public Facebook group, which is also called the House Call Vet Cafe, the same name as this podcast, and which is a warm and cozy community for mobile vets to support each other in professional and personal development, in creative entrepreneurship, and in friendship. So thank you guys for spending time with me today. Let's dive into the episode.
If you're looking for help with ultrasound scanning, whether that's choosing a new machine or developing your ultrasound skills, check out the First Opinion Veterinary Ultrasound website at fovu.co.uk for independent machine reviews and online and in-person teaching options. FOVU, simplifying ultrasound.
Welcome, everyone. We have a super special guest today who happens to be one of my best friends. Even though I haven't known her very long, I still consider this woman to be one of my inner circle people, and we've kind of grown together. And so I wanted to hear from her today because she is doing some special and unique stuff. She has been a house call vet in the past, not currently, but I wanted to introduce you guys to Dr. Nia Perkins. She graduated from Tuskegee University College of Veterinary Medicine in 2002. She moved to Virginia right out of vet school, where she had her first associate position and learned very quickly, like many of us, very quickly that it wasn't her cup of tea. And it sounds she tried to be an associate a few other times, and it just seemed to reinforce that not cup of tea thing that I very much relate to. She started doing relief work less than a year after graduation. I relate to that as well. And that's when she got her first taste of working for herself and just kind of having control over her own career. Shortly after that, she did start a house call service called the House Call Vet in 2007. And then in 2009, she opened a brick and mortar with a classmate of hers where they treated small animals and exotics in Northern Virginia. And then after almost 10 years, she felt that it was time to start a new chapter, and she moved to the Atlanta area with her son. At that point, she was doing continuous relief work, but she felt her heart really wasn't in it anymore. She was super burnt out, like so many of us know that feeling. And she started looking at other opportunities, and she explored telehealth a little bit. She started writing in pet publications, so really branching out creatively as well. In 2020, she started working with another telehealth company
where she was quickly promoted to a leadership position. Why am I not surprised? And becoming, kind of a mentor for the vet team, and then a team lead supervising the vets and the mentor team. So at this point, she kind of realized that she had a knack for coaching, mentoring, and leadership. And it sounds like maybe this was a long time coming before this, but maybe that this particular experience in your professional career kind of pushed you to realize you wanted to formally do this. But she enrolled in a coaching training program in 2020, graduated from that program in May 2021, and started her coaching business called My Vetamorphosis. And it is now 1 year old in May, focusing on veterinary career transitions. And, she does a whole lot more, but the vetamorphosis I think is so cool because we're talking about changing and shifting. And, a lot of us are very mobile in, we're not only mobile vets, but mobile horizontally, vertically in how we live out our profession as veterinarians. And when she's not working, she spends time with her son, her family, and her friends, going to outdoor markets, listening to live music, whoop whoop, and baking sweets, of course, as well as traveling. So she is currently giving herself time to grieve the loss of her senior pup, Miles Davis, and doesn't have an animal right now, in my understanding, but just wanted to send her some love, and we all get it. And just love to you. Miles Davis was amazing. I'm privileged enough to have met him through the Zoom. It's an amazing dog. So welcome, Nia. Sorry to introduce you with the sad part here.
Thank you, Eve. That was a wonderful introduction. It's so exciting, to meet other veterinarians that are taking charge of their lives and their careers and, really just diving in. You have a great mentor in Dr. Eve. And I say, as much as you can, just, utilize all of the resources that she provides. So just in going through all of the things, being an associate, being a house call vet, telehealth, writing, I just kind of decided 2020 was going to be the year that I really took it seriously. So I'm enrolled in a coaching program. It was a 6-month program, got my formal training. And then last May kind of dived right in, and I actually met Eve maybe like a month or two out of that program. And I think she had reached out to me some time ago, and I kind of circled back, and we just from there just kind of developed this relationship. So she's really kind of helped me mold my coaching practice. I'm so happy to be here.
Amazing. Thank you for that. And I'm glad you're here too. I wanted to start out by asking you the first question that I always ask everyone. When you're in the car, do you have a snack that you like to eat?
I would say my snack of choice would be I love sweet and salty.
Mhm.
So very simple, peanuts and raisins. And it gives you, a boost of energy and it satisfies my sweet tooth, which I have often. So raisins.
Very nice. Other than the fact that I hate raisins, that actually sounds really good.
What is wrong with that picture?
I don't know. But anyway, so you're a life coach, and I'm super excited to have you on the show for a number of reasons. But we just had you speak to the House Call Vet Academy coaching session. So we have a monthly group coaching session where everybody kind of gets together, catches up. It's a real bonding thing. We all know each other by face. And then in the second half of our coaching calls, I will either focus on a targeted topic that people choose or have a guest, a special guest speaking to us or giving us some, extra special
Right.
love.
Love, yes.
And we just had Nia speak to the House Call Vet Academy and do some sample coaching and make a very generous offer to do a little, like a free complimentary 15-minute session with everyone. So I'm super excited about that. I could tell everybody got a lot out of that experience. And so thank you for that. And I wanted to start out by asking what a life coach is. How is it different from therapy? How is it different from, what is it? Yeah.
Uh, Yeah, that's a question that I tend to see when I'm looking through Facebook groups and I'll see people mention coach. And then there are a lot of people that just they don't really know what it is. So coaching is basically, we start from where you are and we move you or help you move to where you want to be. I mean, that's really it in a nutshell. Coaches are there to really listen to what you have to say. Like, you are the star, and coaches are there to, support you and ask you those tough questions. The questions that either that that's something you need to be thinking about, but you don't want to act on it, or you really don't know that it's even something that you should be thinking about. So, we just kind of bring that out of you. But ultimately, you're the one that really does have the solution to your problem or to your challenge. We just kind of nudge you along and, kind of get you there a little bit faster. But we don't, no treating, no prescribing. We're not doctors. I mean, I'm sure you all already know these things, even though people think that veterinarians are therapists and we can help the humans, but that's not what we're here for. So therapists, they basically will deal with a lot of past traumas or, things in your past, and they kind of get you to the present. And coaches get you from the present to your future.
Very cool. That's a really neat way of explaining it. I hadn't thought about it that way. It's very much like tied with your mental health and emotional health with a goal, like a specific
Mhm.
goal.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a very interesting modality. And just watching you work and, just a few minutes ago with our group, there were just some interesting questions that were just like, bam, you got right to the heart of it so quickly just by asking the right question. And it's very moving to see. I've experienced it through coaching myself and just watching you work, creating that safe space and then asking the targeted question that gets to the heart of the issue so quickly. It's very different from any sort of therapy that I've ever experienced. They ask leading questions or not leading questions, but thought questions and things, but this is like a really specific type of approach and very, very tied to, like, goal setting as well, like, you don't have to have past trauma or you don't have to be, working through damage necessarily to have a coach. You can, right? Do you ever do any work with kind of, like, working through old wounds and things like that?
You know, I try to, that's something that I definitely try not to. It's hard to say because a lot of, a lot of people do have, that is kind of the underlying reason why certain things are happening in their lives.
Yeah.
So I acknowledge it. But as far as working through it, I tell them or I'll, let them know if it's something that I don't, myself don't feel comfortable with working through. I will let them know that it really just depends on what we're talking about. But usually with past, traumas and situations, I acknowledge it. But if it's something that we need to kind of, have them work through, I usually will refer that they speak with a therapist.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a lot in common, but the modalities are truly quite different.
Mhm.
So, can you tell me a little bit more about what led you into the coaching? We've talked about this personally, but I'd love to share with everyone what got you there. And you've done so many things in the veterinary industry, and you've experienced yourself all of these transitions between house call, brick and mortar, relief, associate. You've had other types of vet-oriented businesses as well. Like you're just like a powerhouse transition.
What do you call it?
What do you call it? I relate to that very much.
Yeah. I still feel like I'm finding myself.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, I have had the pleasure of being many different things. I'm seeing many different things in the veterinary profession. So, yeah, started off as an associate, went from there to relief. I mean, you pretty much gave the rundown earlier, and I've never felt settled. Like,
Mhm.
I've never felt that I found my happy place. And even owning a practice was actually my dream. It was my dream to have a practice. And I thought that's where I was going to end up. Like that was the end for me until I retired. And that wasn't the case. And so after that, just still just trying to figure things out and started, like you mentioned earlier, I started working at a telehealth company where I think my supervisor, who just so happens to be Dr. Sharice Raw, uh,
Oh!
yeah, she was my supervisor at the telehealth company, and I think that she realized very early that, I just don't want her, sitting on the dashboard answering pet questions. Like, I feel like there's something more. So she gave me the opportunity to mentor the other veterinarians, and it turned into more of a team lead position where, I mentored the mentors as well as the DVM team. And I've always felt like I've had that leadership
Mhm.
characteristic, but I've never really I don't know, I never really, like, pumped myself up, to actually, do something that I really enjoyed doing while I was a telehealth consultant. So the mentoring and the coaching, I just gravitated toward.
Mhm.
And finally, I just, said, "You know what? If I want to make this a real thing, I know that I could probably coach without formal training, but I felt, as we do for being a veterinarian, we want to make sure that we get the training that we need. And of course, is necessary, otherwise we wouldn't be able to practice. But I got my formal training and here I am, and I love what I'm doing. At some point, I would love for this to be my thing, my only thing, and coaching is something that I'm only doing for veterinarians. It's
Mhm.
exclusive to veterinarians, and I've had people question me like, "Well, why not open it up to, like veterinarians and vet assistants and techs?" And maybe eventually it will get to that point, but I feel like right now we're kind of at this weird place where we are struggling. And I don't know if we realize that there are people out there that want to support us. And so I want to just focus on my colleagues. So,
That's
yeah.
amazing. Yeah, focus on what you know, and what you personally experienced. I think there's something really powerful about knowing every single person that you work with. You get it, like, really get it, because you're in the same shoes, you've been in the same shoes, and I think that's a really special thing. Can you tell me what are some issues that people come to you with frequently? Like, is it a lot of imposter syndrome? Is it compassion fatigue? Is it just not time management? What kinds of things do you work through with people?
So those are definitely some of the topics that come up. I think lack of confidence, the imposter syndrome is definitely, I think that is across the board something that is seen very commonly.
Mhm.
Time management, boundary issues,
Mhm.
just those dealing with toxic people,
Well, yeah.
not just at work, but in your own personal life. So just an array of situations and, things that we see kind of pop up. I mean, you could talk to someone that you don't even know about like what's happening in your life and they're sitting there like, yep, another vet.
Yep.
Yep, yep, I know exactly what you mean. I'm dealing with that too. So yeah, so those are kind of the running things that I see on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's really uncanny how vets like we know each other's souls. Sometimes I feel, we've been through the same ringers and no matter where in the country or the world you are, we've been through the same challenges with compassion fatigue, burnout, working under other people, the pay issues we have, the types of toxic people we encounter, and the emotionality of the work we do. It's just, it's unbelievable how homogenized it is, the wide variety and diversity of struggles that we we all know so well.
So we do. And I just thought of, something else that when you're transitioning or when you're considering, because we're seeing a lot of that, we're hearing about a lot of vets that are just being honest again, they're ready to leave the profession. And it hurts to hear that because a lot of, this started very young for us. So, to hear that, but I think in doing that, a lot of vets feel that they are, and I saw someone post this recently, feel like you're a slave to your job.
Yeah.
And that's not good. That's not how we should be feeling. So, trying to figure out how to get out of that box
Mhm.
and think about things differently is something that I work on that, with them for sure.
Yeah, I love that. And I was speaking to a friend the other day who is also a different kind of coach in the music world. And she was saying she was going through a really bad depressive episode. And I remembered hearing, she had been a coach for me. And so I know how she coaches, and she coaches from her own experience and her own pain points. She uses that to understand other people and know what's going to help them. And I said to her, I was like, I never doubted your authenticity. Like, I know that you teach from your experiences, but seeing that you are still going through some of these issues and you're a real person and you are still fighting that fight, like not even the fight, but you're on that learning curve just with the rest of us. It's so much more authentic to see that this is a real thing, and you've gotten through it before, you'll get through it again. And I'm kind of referring back to what you said kind of a little bit earlier about how you're still learning and you're still kind of on that same curve with the rest of us. And who better to lift us than someone who has and still leans into that every day, right?
It is not something that is ever 100% figured out. You're constantly on a daily basis learning about yourself and how you handle certain situations. So, for me to work with someone and give the illusion that I have it all figured out, that is not being true, to who I am.
Right.
So I'm very open about, like my clients really become, especially if we're working together for a long time, they understand that I'm just like them, just trying to make it through the days
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
But the difference is well, not the difference. It's all about figuring out what works for you and getting to your happy place ultimately. It's so simple for me, getting to your happy place. So I'm still working on getting to my happy place. So
Yeah. But you have the tools to do it, and you have the training and the experience, and you're leaning into it. And so, when you do this on a professional level, you have perspective as well.
right.
Right.
Yep.
And I think it's so important in coaching to be vulnerable, because when you're vulnerable and you're authentic and where you struggle, other people feel safe to do the same and to,
Absolutely.
to be open and honest. And that's a place where healing can occur. When people feel safe, they know, this is not a place for pretense. Like, you can let your guard down. I'm doing the same.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah, safety and trust, being able to build up that trust between the coach and the person that you're speaking with is so important. So that's definitely what coaches do. That's what I do for sure.
Wonderful. So I'm going to do a little weird thing with this episode. We had a few particular questions that were asked by the House Call Vet Academy participants in advance of our group coaching call. And some of the questions they asked were really good and really common questions, and Nia answered them beautifully. So I am going to do a weird thing where I literally give you guys a little bit of a snippet from our group coaching call. So I am now magically transporting us into a little excerpt from one of our group coaching calls where Nia spoke to us in 3, 2, 1. Here it is. Okay, so a couple folks asked how I don't know if this is something that you can answer directly, and if you're not sure how to answer it, then I can give my answer as well. But
Mhm.
someone said, "How do you know when to cut back?" So we talked about this a little bit. Like she's now in that kind of phase where you're doing relief work, you're doing part-time work, and you're starting your house call practice. And the way I teach is like you sort of have to like taper off one and taper onto the other so you're never without an income and you don't have the pressure to see clients you don't want to see. And so she was worried and I think it's like how do you know when to make changes and what do you do about it?
I think that's a great question. So I 100% agree with the tapering because unless you have it that way, which I don't know about you all, but I don't, but making sure that you are always supported financially. So the tapering, I think, is a great method. But how do you know? I think it's important to kind of create a timeline in the beginning. So write down the date that you want to stop doing all the other things and focus on your business. So today we're at May 1st. If you say by December 31st, 2022, I would like to 100% be in my business. I think when we kind of create that timeline from the beginning, we set ourselves up to make sure that, we do those things by that time. I think when you're kind of in the midst of things, it all seems, kind of overwhelmed with everything that's going on. So, since that's where you are now, I would say, you kind of have to look at what is coming in for you right now. Like, do you feel that you're at a place where you can be supported by your business financially and that be the only thing that you do? Budgets I think are important. If you haven't like worked out your budget to see if all of your expenses are covered, I think, that's something, for you to do. But if you haven't created kind of that timeline right now, I would do that. So even if it's 3 months from now, 6 months from now, write down that date because I think once you write down that date and you see it on paper, it will make sense. It will become like your reality. And I think that will help you make a decision when your last day will be.
That's such good advice, like a tangible goal. Like it's
Mhm.
actually an accountability tool and a tangible, measurable thing. And when you have like I guess they say if you can't measure it or what is it? If you can't
I
measure
mean, really, if you
it,
can't measure it,
it or like
yeah,
yeah. So adding almost like metrics to your
yeah,
goals.
yes. And I think it's also important to have someone in I like to call them tribes, have someone in your tribe that can kind of hold you accountable, whether that is a family member that you are comfortable with or a friend. Of course, a coach, a life coach can definitely kind of keep you on that path. A Dr. Eve, can keep you on that path. But having someone, that you feel comfortable with that can support you in that journey, to just it being the business and not anything else.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So, next question that came up. How do you talk to your clinic team about transitioning away from your clinic? There's so much guilt when people walk away from their team, even if it's toxic to them. People feel so guilty and they feel so bad. Like this subject has come up so many times in our group. So I'm really glad. I think, yeah, I would really love to hear what you have to say about because you've transitioned many times yourself. How do you walk away without disappointing the techs that love you or the doctors that need you? What do you do?
Mhm. That's a very it's touchy. It's a tough one. And I think for most of us, because we really care about what people think of us and, that kind of drives us. But this is what I would say. You cannot control other people's emotions. It is not your responsibility to be in charge of how someone else is going to respond. All you can do is be authentic in your approach, whatever that looks like for you. How would you approach it? How would you approach any situation where you're having to have a conversation, like a touchy conversation with someone? You be yourself. And if you are like, kind of edgy and, it's hard for you to, have those conversations, it might be a good idea to, again, find someone that you feel comfortable with, that you can kind of have that dialogue, practice the conversation, and then present it. But I think the most important thing is you really can't control how other people are going to respond. So don't use that as a way to prolong the conversation. You know, People are going to be hurt. People are going to be sad. There's nothing you can really do about that. So just try to approach it as you normally would, that type of conversation, and just know that you can't control how other people feel. So how would you want them to approach you having that conversation? That's how you approach them.
Was just, I think shortly before you came in, Erin was telling us about how she dropped off some flyers in person to clinics to introduce her in-home euthanasia practice, and someone was just a total douchebag and was like, what was it that they said, Erin?
Oh, one of those people.
Mm-hmm.
It was just, it she laughed in my face. It was ridiculous.
When that happened, what were you feeling at that moment?
Thankfully, I have a vet life coach, and instantaneously when she said that, I heard of her quotes in my head, like, we serve the willing. The people that want us are the ones that we gravitate towards. So we serve the willing. And this is not my ideal client. So bless and release. And then I laughed in my car thinking, I hope she recycles the flyer instead of throwing it in the trash.
You really, and I think that, that also speaks to, what I said is you can't control how people are going to react. So you know what you came there for. If this is not something that they are wanting, then okay, great. Thank you for your time. It's time to move on, to the next one. But it sounds like you already had that taken care of in your
For sure. We've
mind.
worked with that quite a bit because the coaching model that she uses and stuff, you can't control what people are going to do. You have to do what feels right to you. And that's their choice and their thoughts that create how they're feeling about those things. And you can't change their thoughts about it. So do what you have to do to feel good about you and keep going. It's their choice how they feel about it.
I 100% agree with that. Yes, I love that.
Awesome. Yeah, so we deal with that quite a bit where we're dealing with people and their intense emotions and reactions. And I think it's so important for us as a group to, whether it's clients, whether it's staff, the team that we're leaving, to pursue what feels right in our life. We're never going to be able to control their emotions. And it's always, some of the stuff we're doing is so emotional always. And so, just acknowledging that there are going to be emotions that come up either from people you leave, groups you leave, clients you leave, whether it's leaving or not, or whether it's introducing and someone calls you one of those, whatever it is. It's just such an ongoing process to kind of remember that we can never control anyone else's feelings, and therefore we have to proceed as such, stick with what feels authentic, our own integrity, and that's all we can do. That's the only way that we can proceed. Okay, next question. We had a question about how to stay organized. This is a very general question. Can you brain dump for us from a life coach perspective? How do you stay organized when you have 50 million balls in the air?
I think it's one of those things where you are sometimes having to just readjust. You try one way and sometimes that way doesn't work. And then you move on to a different way of doing things. I would say for myself, and this is something that I recently talked to a client about, and that just comes up a lot in what we do. I talked to them about this. It's like the red light, yellow light, green light system. Now, this probably exists, but as I was talking to her, listening, I said, you know what? This makes sense. So we're just going to try this. So the red light, yellow light, green light system, you take 30 days. And in your red light, so you make, 3 lists, your red, yellow, and green. In your red column, these are the tasks. And I highly recommend don't load it with like 50 million things. Take your top 3 tasks that, you're trying to complete. In your red column is going to be the things that you want to try to complete in the next week. Your yellow is going to be in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And the green will be what you want to have completed by the end of the month. So your red is like your low. Those are like the things that you have to get done right now. And once you complete those things, you mark them off. So again, I wouldn't put more than 3 things in each column. And when you finish those things, if you want to add more things, that's fine. But at least once you check them off, you kind of get a sense of, man, I completed that. Like I did that. I finished that versus having a million, billion, gajillion things in each column
God, I hate that.
and it just never ends. You're just checking them off and then you add something else on. Like you're never going to get everything done. Okay. Life is just not, it's not meant for us to complete everything. I also want you to remember you are one person, you're human, and you don't have to complete everything at one point. We have tomorrow. So whatever you don't complete today, it can get done tomorrow. But that's kind of my little tool for trying to organize things so that you feel accomplished that you got something done. And I know that there are a million different ways to organize. I think ultimately you have to find like what works for you. And that's something in our coaching conversations that we figure out what works best for you because, it's not cookie cutter for everyone.
Yeah, everyone's brain works in a different way. That's a really great tool because I'm used to having a to-do list that is just never ending and will just never be completed.
Mhm.
So having like a little bit of a system to like rein it in, that sounds
Mhm.
awesome.
Yeah. And then taking time to, go over those things, with your coach or someone that, you feel comfortable with, having an accountability partner, like someone that is like, okay, did you get those things done on your red list or your yellow list? Just having that person to hold you accountable is important.
Very cool. I was wondering, just personal question, if you could speak for a minute on imposter syndrome. Is that something that you deal with quite a bit with people who are coming for coaching with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all have a taste of that, and that imposter syndrome, that name, that's a fairly new thing. I mean, I've been out for about 20 years and that has been going on since I'm sure the test of time. What I would say with imposter syndrome is I think everyone just has to remember that we are not superhuman. Like, I don't know if I can say it enough that, we think or people think that as veterinarians, we are supposed to know everything. And that's just not the case. It's not the case. Be okay to say, I don't know. It's okay not to know and you can always find the answer. But I think we just put so much pressure on ourselves to like know everything. It's just not realistic. So just know that, you are human. Be okay to say, I don't know. And I think, those are kind of like the first steps. But I think it's like a constant thing that we have to work on, give yourself some grace. Like, don't be careful how you talk to yourself or about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Last week, I was working in a practice. This is just an example. I was working in a practice doing relief, and there was another doctor and the practice manager, and there was a vet tech in the office. And we were just talking. I don't even remember what we were talking about. All of a sudden, I hear myself speaking so badly about myself, about, just not feeling adequate as a doctor. I think they were trying to figure out the schedule. And so there was a day that I was going to be on by myself. And my anxiety level just shot through the roof. I'm like, you all want me to basically be in charge of everything that comes through the doors and it really did something to me. And so I remember hearing myself talking down about my skill set. And when I went home, I couldn't believe that that even came out of my mouth. Um,
Your
I
inner mouth. Yeah.
yeah, and everybody heard it, so I think we have to be okay with ourselves, and we are amazing people that can just do, we can do so many different things, but it's okay not to know how to do everything. Like, it's okay. So I think it's like a constant, we just have to keep telling ourselves this. So imposter syndrome is not something that will go away just like that. And it probably will never go away, but it's managing our own expectations of ourselves, I think is something that we have to do.
Yeah, it's totally a work in progress. So many of these things like the boundaries and all the stuff that we talk about in the course and that we do as vets and house call vets, like these are lifelong learning curves and we're all on them all together. So thank you for sharing that story. I mean, I think all of us have moments where we're like, what did I just say about myself? Jesus. Like, I am such an asshole to myself. And now I'm doing it again. I'm calling myself an asshole. My God. Like, it could be this, like, whole, like, vicious cycle. And, like, there's actually a word for it. I just remembered it. It's called the second arrow effect in the Buddhist train of thought. That's like something bad happens, and then you shoot yourself with a second arrow by berating yourself for how the thing happened. And that adds so much pain that is not inherent in the actual initial event, like the way we speak to ourselves.
Hmm.
Okay, so that was a tiny little bit of one of our group coaching calls, and they're usually pretty interactive. We were kind of on a roll just there, but wanted to share some of Nia's answers and what we talked about in that call because it was just too good not to share. So, anyway, here we are back in the podcast. And before we close, I just wanted to ask if you have any particular tips as a life coach that's actually been a house call vet on anything from transitioning to house call practice, transitioning to telemedicine, anything on transitions, life coaching, wellness, any advice you have. You just are such a wealth of information coming from so many angles that I almost don't even know what to ask you. But just like, is there anything, any couple tips or anything like that that you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
So I do actually have a few tips, but I like to try to keep things simple. So I'll go with my first tip. And sorry, I have to do a little reading here. You don't have to be anyone's super anything. Take on what you can. Take on what you can today and save the rest for tomorrow because it's still going to be there, and all you have to do is figure out what works best for you. So just remember, you do not have to be anyone's super anything.
Great.
My second tip is to make sure you are at the top of each list you make. And because I'm pretty sure if you're in me, you love making a list of things to do. So just always make sure that, that you're at the top of that list, and always, always invest in yourself because that's something that I've had to learn how to do. And I can just imagine that many of us don't take the time to invest in ourselves. So that is super important.
Bravo.
Yeah. And my final tip would be when you start getting that overwhelming feeling, stop and just take a few breaths. Try to focus just on your breathing for the moment. And then remember, you are a human. People can wait. That project can wait. Make sure you're okay first and get the support if you need it. Just remember, it can wait. You can. Those are my 3 tips.
Wonderful. Thank you. I think that just really simplifies some things that are hard to remember for us. Put yourself first.
Yeah.
Cool. So, Nia, can you tell me a little bit about some of the offerings that you have, what you do? How can people find you if they feel like you'd be an amazing mentor or coach for them, which I will vouch you are?
Sure. So probably the best place to find me is if you visit my website, it's www.myvetamorphosis.com. So just substitute the M for the V, no, the V for the M. And so that my website pretty much has all of my information. You can schedule a discovery, a complimentary discovery session with me there. And we can kind of go into more detail about anything that you like. Also, for the months of May and June, so until the summer starts, I have a spring special where you will get a 30-minute coaching session a month. If you sign up for like 3 months, that's the minimum. So you get a 30-minute coaching session, you get unlimited texts and emails with myself. So
Mhm.
yeah, so if something comes up, you can reach out to me and I will respond with some recommendations. It also includes the recording of the coaching session, as well as you get invited to like a free online private portal. And that's where all of our information is stored. So in our discovery session, if that's something you'd be interested in, then we can sign you up and get you started with some coaching. And I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn, My Vetamorphosis. You just search for that and sign up for newsletter and news. You can do that on my website as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much for spending time in the House Call Vet Cafe today. Can I close with a question on what is your favorite beverage?
Are we talking non-alcoholic or alcohol?
Whatever we have celebrated in the House Call Vet Cafe, and we've also celebrated, we've had a toast in the House Call Vet wine bar, so it is up to you.
Okay. So I'll give two. So my non-alcoholic beverage of choice would be I love Shirley Temples.
Mm.
I absolutely love them and I love making them. So Shirley Temple for the non-alcoholic beverage. And my alcoholic beverage of choice would be a Moscow Mule. I love
Ooh,
it. And I have the little copper mug to go with it. And I love it.
awesome. I'm a huge fan of mules too. I just realized there are all these different types of mules,
There are,
and I love trying them all. So excellent beverage selections.
thank you.
Thanks so much for spending time with me today, and I can't wait to catch up with you next time.
Yes, thank you, E, for having me. I enjoyed myself so much.
Wonderful. I'll talk to you later.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the House Call Vet Cafe. If you enjoyed this episode, then hit the subscribe or follow button on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never have to miss an episode. This podcast is made specifically for you, so don't be shy if you'd like to reach out and let me know your thoughts on this episode. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook as The House Call Vet Academy, where I also share more valuable content. If you're interested in learning more about consulting for House Call Vets or the House Call Vet Academy online course and community, please click on the link in the show notes. Have an amazing rest of your day, and I can't wait for you to join us for our next episode of the House Call Vet Cafe.